All right, welcome to the latest episode of The Special Sauce. December 2025, we're coming to the end of the year. And today, Christos and I will be doing a bit of a review of 2025 and also some predictions for 2026.
We'll cover a few things today, including what sectors seem to have been doing well and also not so well, why it's so hard to find recruiters right now, the changes we've seen in salaries, benefits and comp structures this year, and finally, our predictions for 2026.
So, Christos, we're here, December 2025. How would you sum up 2025 from a recruitment perspective in a couple of words?
In a couple of words, I'd say it's a roller coaster in a good way, if that makes sense. And I'll explain why. I think, obviously last year was a tough year for a lot of agencies, especially that back half. I think coming into 2025, we saw a lot of optimism from agencies, a lot of hiring from agencies, and then it kind of probably dipped down a bit for various sort of factors, and I think what was going on economically as well and politically in the world. But then again, heading into in sort of Q3, Q4 calendar year, we've seen it really bounce back.
Yep.
We've seen a lot of increased demand. So speaking with a lot of clients, I think they've had really, really good years. Most clients are saying they're having profitable years. So yeah, I think it's been a better year than it was last year, but I still don't think we've reached the anywhere near the highs of where we've been in the past. What about yourself? What have you seen?
I would say it's been interesting. I probably wouldn't have as positive, I think, outlook maybe as you. I think there's certainly been some agencies out there and recruiters making money, but certainly, it has been tough for a lot of agencies and recruiters out there. But I think sentiment going into this year is pretty good. I think it's just been a tough one because there's just been so much happening in just the business world and, economics and elections and whatever else. But hopefully it gets even better next year.
Absolutely. Look, I think we've seen certainly, as you just touched on, right, some sectors do really, really well. Others probably drop off. What do you reckon you've seen? Which ones? First, let's start with the positive, right? I know you're a positive person, Leroy. So which ones do you think have done really well this year?
Thank you, Christos, and note the tone of sarcasm there in Chris's voice. All right, what's done well this year? I think that there's probably for us as Rec2Rec, I think there's we see certain trends out there. I think there's probably two sectors or markets that for me have been really positive. The first one would be the tech recruitment market. I think it was probably from about Easter, we really started to see that pick up significantly from a brief perspective. And that's just gone harder and harder, and definitely starting to see a lot more recruiters punching out some really good results in that space. The second one, which is really interesting, I think, has been the building and construction market. We work with quite a few agencies in that space, not only in Melbourne, but Sydney, Perth and Brizzy. And that's been really good to see. I think that they are, and probably another theme, a lot of them are doing really well in the states outside of Victoria. Obviously living in Melbourne, living in Victoria, we know it's a bit of a shit show down here at the moment, but that's probably a whole different podcast.
That's I think there's a few podcasts for that already.
Yeah. But no, I think if I could probably talk about every sector, but for me, from what I've seen in terms of, where and what's been happening, they're the two sectors that have had the biggest, positive bounce, in my opinion, this year so far.
Yeah, interesting.
What about for you? What do you reckon?
No, I agree. I think definitely tech is one that we've seen. I think if you just look at the demand from a lot of our clients, right, particularly across Melbourne and Sydney, the two biggest markets, chalk and cheese to 12 months ago, right? There's a lot of demand right now for experienced tech recruiters across most agencies, I would say. But obviously, various factors. I think building construction as well. Yeah, huge demand in that. I think a sector as well that we're probably starting to see come back, and I think it's probably been more the second half of this year as opposed to the first, is sales recruitment.
Oh, yes.
Something close to our heart, Leroy. Obviously, we were sales recruiters before the wonderful world of Rec2Rec, but I think at the start of this year, just the demand just wasn't there, right? And I think that's, you probably look at agencies, end user clients. A lot of say it could be tech sales agencies, manufacturing sales, whatever it may be. The demand just wasn't there, right? But second half of the year, increased briefs from
Yeah,
for
you're
most
right.
people, and it's a good lead indicator for next year as well. I think whenever you see sort of companies hiring, salespeople, where it's BDMs, account executives, it usually means that the market's on the way up, and companies are willing to or starting to spend more on buying whatever they need to buy.
Yeah, you're right. I probably forgot about that one. Um, and I think you look at even just some of the guests we've had on this year on this series. We had Priscilla early on, sales recruiter, John Joe as well. So yeah, that's definitely a space. And I think like we're seeing big numbers get billed in that, and that's whether it's tech sales, FMCG, industrial, B2B.
Yeah.
So yeah, some good to see some positive stuff out there in market. Let's flip it, Chrissy. And I know you are the optimist and the more positive out of the both of us. But what are the markets that perhaps haven't really kicked on this year, or where you see perhaps it's been tougher?
Yeah, I think there's probably two or three for me. I think healthcare is definitely one. I think probably last year, that was all the rage, right? Where we saw a lot of agencies, hiring and a lot of consultants, billing some crazy numbers, right? And for various sort of, whatever reasons. And this year's just really died off, right? I think a lot of spending in that space. And as well, we've seen probably a lot of candidates from healthcare come onto market, right? More on the white collar side, I think marketing.
Yeah.
I think marketing, and again, it's probably due to numerous sort of, economic factors. But, when times are tough, marketing's unfortunately one of those departments that, gets a line through it, right? So, but yeah, they're probably the two for me that I think we've seen less and less demand in across the board. What about you? Have I missed anything?
Yeah, I think it's funny with healthcare. Like, I suppose I'm not in it to know the real specifics of it, and I don't know if it's dropped off or it's like just dropped off like significantly, or it's just not as good as it was, like because it was absolutely flying. Right? Maybe it's still going along okay, but just nowhere near those heights. Interestingly enough, if you look in particular across Sydney, if you look at the ads on Seek for recruiters, like 70% of the ads on Seek for recruitment agencies are in healthcare.
Yeah.
So the market's still obviously there. I think, marketing's probably the other one, but I think probably the other one that's been a little bit quiet for this year is anyone kind of recruiting across the banking and financial sector, like the actual banks, insurance, super, that kind of stuff seems to have been pretty quiet for a little bit. So, fingers crossed for everyone that some of those sectors come back in a big way once we get into 2026.
No, fingers crossed they will. I'm sure they will, right?
Cool. All right, next part of this episode, Chris, let's talk a bit more about why it's hard to find experienced recruiters now. So, we always get asked from our clients and candidates, what is the market like? And definitely for us, if I was to sum it up, it's job rich, candidate short, which is surprising to a lot of people. But yeah, give us a bit of a rundown, I think, and let's discuss this. Why is it so hard to find experienced recruiters right now?
Look, I think it's a couple of reasons, right? Number one, we'll probably have to go back a couple of years, right? We had that sort of post-COVID boom where, the market was going crazy and it was great times for everyone. And a lot of those recruiters probably came in at that time, what was 21, 22, 23. A lot of them have just moved out of the industry. Things got tough. Expectations from a client management, business development perspective, they got tough. And I think a lot of agencies started to put, probably a bit more pressure from a sales perspective and a numbers perspective. And people, whether it was through their own accord or, not. Sorry, let me start again. And a lot of recruiters, exited the industry, right? So, and I guess the result of that, it means the good recruiters right now, they're on good desks, right? So they're billing good numbers, they're earning good commissions, they're happy. There's no, I guess, real driver for them to move.
Yeah.
Unless something, there's a catalyst in their business. So
I think just on that though, and I mean, you just said it there, and I do hear it from a lot of other agencies where it's like, okay, people started in that post-COVID boom, it got tough and they left. Which, the market did, I suppose, get tough and it changed. But I also think you can't put all that responsibility on those recruiters who left the market.
Oh, no.
And this is my reasoning behind that, right? When they were hired and when they joined those businesses, there probably wasn't the conversation about the sales and the business development component of that role. So it was purely just, here's a desk, fill these jobs. Basically, if this keeps running, you're never going to have to do BD. 6, 9, 12 months later, when the market shifted, all of a sudden these people were told, right, you now need to do BD. However, it was because when they joined the business, they weren't really coached or trained on how to do the BD or, all that kind of stuff. It's a completely different role. So, yeah, I think that it just means that, like 60, 70% of the talent that joined our industry then is already gone.
Yeah.
Which is a bit of a shame.
No, absolutely. So, yeah, you're right. I think everyone, as a result, wants that local experience, right? And, I think the reason for that as well, there's a lot of cost pressures on businesses, right? It's expensive at the moment to be running businesses or recruitment agencies. So I think a lot of agencies right now, in terms of that sort of risk reward factor, are saying, hey, we want someone who can hit the ground running, essentially be a plug and play.
Yep.
For this year, right? They can come in, they know their market, they've got a network, and they can leverage that in order to start getting runs on the board, basically, right?
Yeah. I get that 100%. Like the market's tough. You want experienced talent, but at the same time, it's just not there. And you also said like it's not moving. And I think to give some of our listeners a more insight into the Aussie market. I know you and I talk about this all the time that, and I can't emphasize enough. Like literally 95% of the recruiters, agency recruiters, I should say, that we're in touch with on a weekly basis. Whether that's a phone call or they reply to a LinkedIn message or a text, WhatsApp, whatever, over 90% agency recruiters would say, yes, I'm open to roles, but I will only look at internal recruitment or TA.
So we get all the time, right?
90% of the time.
Yeah. And look, I don't know whether that's because of the perception of, which I think is wrong, right? That perception that TA is easier because, there isn't that BD element, potentially. But that's where I think a lot of people want to move to, but that's just not where the demand is right now.
And look, for me, like if that's what they want to do, that's what they want to do.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't give a fuck, right? Like for me, they're a 360 recruiter and a TA. It's two separate different jobs.
Yeah.
And if someone doesn't want to do it, I think for us, or for me anyway, I guess for both of us, that's not something we try and twist someone's arm on. No. Because if they're looking for TA, and we push them into 360, they're just going to leave and go to TA.
It's never going to work, right? And you get it as well. I'm sure you've had candidates, not just us, but I'm sure a lot of our clients as well probably have interviewed people through their own networks, and the candidate will say, "Yeah, I'm open to either agency or internal." It's never going to work.
No,
and that sounds harsh, but the reality is you're either agency or you're on. You want to be in the internal TA and make that sort of transition, right?
Yeah. And I think more often than not, I mean, one thing I say to those recruiters is, okay, cool. So let's say I've got 3 options for you right now. What would you, if you could take your pick, first preference, TA or agency? They're always going to choose TA, which says everything.
Absolutely. I think as well, I think you just touched on it before, in terms of that motivation to make a move, right? Like we've seen it as well, that salaries have probably stagnated as well. So that, I guess that carrot or that incentive, it's fucking just not there, right? No one's offering an extra 20, 25,000 on the base to jump ship across the road.
Nah, you're right. Salaries are stagnated. And look, I think unless it's something like where an agency's coming into a new city or a new discipline, they've got to pay overs to get that person. But I also think like that passive market is almost non-existent for a lot of recruiters or for recruiters at the moment, because you don't have anything that's significantly better. I think for a lot of recruiters, just with what's going on in the world and what's going on in the market, for a lot of them, it's a case of better the devil you know and just stay where you are, right? Because you could make a move for an extra 5 or 10, but if you're still reasonably happy and there's not something that's really pushing you out the door, a lot of people are just going to stay and not even inclined to do those.
Yeah, you take the safe option. That's
100%.
You get that, right? But it's funny though, right? Because coming into December and January tends to be our busiest time of year, right? For us, because I think it's again, probably human nature. People go away. It's been a long year for a lot of people. They've worked hard. They have that break with their family over, over Christmas. And it's probably they come to the realization, shit, I actually do want something different. So I'll come back. They'll get paid their comms bonuses. Feb, March, they'll be ready to make a move, right? So I think agencies probably experience that with their clients and with their candidates as well. So I think it's definitely going to open up.
Yep.
And as people move from one agency to another, that's just going to have that flow-on effect that's going to create more and more opportunity, so to speak.
Yeah, for sure. I think the other thing that will be interesting come next year and what's going to make it harder to find recruiters is the amount of, I guess, newer agencies that are going to look to hire. I think we've had a lot of conversations over the last 4 weeks with agencies who are now ready to, add 2, 3, 4 heads or their first heads into their business. And, give an example, like in the last month, I think we've met with 4 agencies just in the building construction space that are kind of, 2 people that are looking to hire their, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th person next year. So, when that's just more agencies all fighting for the same people in that space, that's going to make it even tougher, I think.
Absolutely. And I think, one thing we see as well, and a lot of those agencies, right, they're going to be unique in their offering, whether it's a bit more salary to attract people because it's, they're going to a smaller business, or whether it's something else in their benefits package. So I think that's going to have a play on the industry as well, and not just building construction, but there's plenty in tech, there's plenty in sales as well. Just off the top of my head, that were probably established 2 years ago, and they're now had a couple of decent years, a bit of cash in the bank, and looking to grow.
And that's the thing. I think being new businesses gives them a certain level of agility to create an EVP and I guess benefits package that's relevant for people now. Whereas a lot of other agencies that have got their kind of, structure and benefits and salaries all based on or all done a couple of years ago when the world was a completely different place.
Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
So that's going to be an interesting part of next year, I reckon.
Absolutely, and that's a good segue, right, into, I guess the next sort of topic we'd love to talk about: salaries, benefits, and comp structures.
Yeah.
Right. What are you sort of seeing out there? What's, we've seen it sort of go a bit up and down, right? But take our listeners. What's, we'll start with salaries, right? What are we sort of seeing?
Oh, look, man, I think once again, there's no one really doing anything outrageous when it comes to salaries. I think the people or the recruiters that I feel for when it comes to salaries are the recruiters that are reasonably senior, maybe even at management or team leader level. Actually, even at principal and senior consultant level that accepted or took their last role at the peak of that post-COVID boom. And at that time, every recruiter was getting paid a much higher salary than they would in the market now. So it means that a lot of these recruiters that last negotiated a salary in, say, 2022, maybe early 23, are on what would be considered pretty high and inflated salaries now. And obviously they've had 3-4 years to get used to living at that level. And now they're going back out to market and agencies are saying, well, yeah, I get that you're on XYZ salary, but your billings or responsibilities just don't measure up to I guess, that salary, and therefore these people having to take a hit. Yeah,
that's right. Like, I think we've unfortunately seen it, right, with a lot of candidates who've probably been in the market longer than they expected, based with their sort of level of experience. And you're absolutely right. A lot of companies now, I think we were seeing sort of salaries at 120 to 140, right, probably 3-4 years ago. Whereas now, you're going to take a $20,000-$30,000 hit. That's just the reality, right, in terms of base salary. So I think a lot more businesses now are just a lot more stringent in terms of what they bring people on.
Definitely.
Definitely in terms of, and that expectation in terms of what they deliver, it's gone higher. And that's just a sign of the market. So, similar to yourself, I feel for them as well, right, because they're in a really, really tough situation at the end of the day. But I don't think salaries have probably, unfortunately, right, and it's probably across the board here in Australia, just haven't grown as significantly as we would have hoped.
Yeah. Let's talk comm structures, because I think for us, talking to recruiters about their next move, one of the things that's kind of progressing up the ladder of important things has been commission structures. And I think that's because base salaries, like we spoke about, just they're not going up. People are really want to make sure that the comms plans that they're going on are pretty good. What's some of the stuff that you're seeing out there, good or bad or ugly?
Yeah. Oh, look, I'd say probably, I'll start with the sort of quarterly or monthly. I think I always do at least get asked, if it's quarterly or monthly. I'd say it's probably 70% quarterly, 30% monthly. What would you say in terms of your experience?
Yeah, I reckon what we see, more agencies are on quarterly than monthly these days.
And I guess the reason for that is just consistency, right? In terms of, what they're sort of paying out to consultants and to promote consistency in terms of their billings. Typical multipliers that we're sort of seeing is anywhere from sort of, 2.5 to 3 for the year. Divided by 4, there's your quarterly sort of threshold. And I think the lowest I'd say the starting is, or the commission rate is at 30%. And most agencies will have those kickers where, they can earn 50% of the billings. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I think it's important for any listeners to know, because like a lot of recruiters might be in their first job as a recruiter and they don't know if their commission structure is good or bad. I think it's important to know that commission structures come in all shapes and sizes, and definitely I think that multiplier model where you get a percentage over that quarterly or monthly threshold is the most common. But I've also seen commission structures where it might be a fixed threshold of say 10K per month. You get anything over, or percentage of anything over 10K, but maybe that's 10, 15%, and it goes up and up and up. So I think commission structures are different wherever you go. I think we've definitely seen this year a lot of companies also play around with their commission structures and change things up. And I can see it from a business perspective as well, why some businesses would want to do that. I mean, it's not getting any cheaper to run a recruitment agency. But my advice to any agency is be very, very careful what you do with commission structures, because, look, that's one area when we know that happens, people are coming to us straight away. Hey, my commission structure's been messed with. I'm not going to earn as much. They've changed the splits or whatever. So, I would say tread with caution if you're an agency looking to change that comms plan for sure.
100% agree. Let me ask you this. We've seen this a couple of times this year, right? Where agencies will offer a commission structure, you get 5%, 10%, 15% of everything you bill, right? What are your thoughts on that? Because on the outside, it sounds awesome, right? But I reckon you've got some thoughts about it.
Well, you just said it there. From the outset, it sounds awesome. I think that's a case of, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Like I said just before, it's pretty expensive to run an agency, and if an agency is going to give you all the tools and support you need to be a big biller, that stuff costs money. So for an agency just to say you're basically getting a percentage from the first dollar, that's awesome. But I think you just need to sit down and do the maths, right? Because those commission structures, I think, work really, really well if you're going to be a biller that's billing below average, right? Because you can bill, you might be able to bill 15 grand a month and get $1,500. That's pretty good going. A lot of other agencies, you'd get nothing. Those models with the low threshold or get money from the first dollar, as I said, they're good if you're billing low, but you really get screwed over if you start to have consistent 30, 40, 50, 60, 70K months, 100, 120K quarters. I think like I said, all commission structures are different. You just got to find what's going to be good for you.
That's right. And I think that's the education piece for our listeners and I guess for recruiters maybe in that first, the first role in recruitment, right? Where, it sounds really enticing, doesn't it? I think at that start, I'm going to, you bill 20 grand for the month and you'll get to 2 grand. That's awesome, right? But you're right. Do the maths. You want to be a big biller, calculate what you're going to earn, billing, say 100 to 120, compare the two. And I'd say, 90% of the time, the threshold model will come out on top.
Yep, agree. All right, Chris, next and final part of today's episode, let's talk about predictions for 2026. I actually went back and looked at an old video where we made predictions, I think, for 24 and 25, and we were miles off.
Miles off?
I don't think we got any of
Don't
them
say
right.
that on the podcast, man. That's does nothing for credibility, right? But
no, we're going to get it right this year.
All right.
But I think that just goes to show what's been happening in the world the last few years has been pretty hard to pick.
it has.
That's what I'm saying.
Mate, take it. We use
right.
whatever excuse we can, right?
Let's go. What do you got? 2026 predictions.
I'm going to say, number one, the sales recruitment and marketing recruitment is going to bounce back massively.
Good. I like that. Got a lot of friends and former colleagues in that space, so I'm all for that. I think we're going to see a lot more new agencies come into the market, even more than last year, and I think a lot of them are going to be much more aggressive in terms of how they go to market to get talent for themselves in that startup phase.
Absolutely. Another thing I think I'm going to make a prediction, Lee, is from a lot of agencies, it's going to be reduced headcount, but high profitability.
Yeah.
Much more of a focus on doing more with less, as opposed to, I think having that sort of vanity metric of, we've got, 40, 50, 60 people in our business and we're so big and we're so great. It's going to be about, hey, we've got a core group, high performers delivering, really, really high numbers.
Yep.
And that's just going to increase the standards internally.
Yep, I think we're already seeing that, and I think it's going to continue into next year. Rec tech isn't getting any cheaper, and it's not getting cheaper to run an agency, so definitely. Next one for me, I think grad programs will be back in a big way, and just out of necessity. When I talk about grad programs, yes, I think that means programs of decent sizes run by the big globals, but I also think the smaller to mid-size agencies are also going to have to get on that train. And that might only be, say, hiring 2 or 3 complete rookies new to recruitment for the year, maybe in Sydney and Melbourne. But I think just out of necessity, agencies are going to do this because there's just not enough people to go around right now, and people have got to start growing their own.
100%. And whether I agree with that, whether that's grads or they go down the route of hiring, you said rookies, right? I think the focus will be, though, pure sales.
Yep.
And really making sure that they have the business development or that, I guess, personality and tenacity to be successful in sales. The final one I'll go with, and we've probably heard this from numerous agencies over the last sort of month or so, is more and more agencies opening interstate offices. So whether that's, Melbourne launching into Sydney to Brisbane, whatever it may be, but we've seen increased demand across, not just 1 or 2 sectors. More and more businesses talking about, hey, 2026, so we're going to expand into New South Wales and go get a couple, put some boots on the ground there.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think where agencies are probably going to more than anywhere else is Brizzy. I think Brisbane seems to be doing pretty well at the moment. I think there's a lot of investment into that city for the Olympics and whatever else. So yeah, agree with you. Whether it's Brisbane or anywhere else, I think agencies are definitely going to start. They're looking to find new ways and new markets to expand. Good stuff. Well, that's it for today, our final episode for the calendar year of The Special Sauce. If there is anything we've spoken about today that you want a little bit more info on, feel free to drop us a line, give us a call, text, WhatsApp, whatever you see fit. We will be more than happy to talk about it. Chrissy, thank you for today. Have a good Christmas. You going away? You doing anything?
Doing Gold Coast, a couple of weeks.
Goldie?
Get a bit of a tan.
Yeah.
Why not? Probably sunburnt, but really looking forward to it with the family. So need a break.
Yeah.
What about yourself?
Nah, we'll stay home this year. Got a little baby at home, so camping and going away is a little bit tricky at the moment. So I will be just at home watching a lot of cricket and watching the Aussies absolutely smash the Poms.
To all our English listeners, come on the Aussies.
And that's us for 2025. Thanks everyone.
Guys.
That's a wrap for this episode of The Special Sauce. We hope that you're walking away with some insights that you can actually use every day on your desk. If you enjoyed the conversation, follow, like, subscribe, or leave a review so we can reach more recruiters just like you. For more about Sorciety, check out our website on society.com or follow us on LinkedIn. Thanks for listening and see you next time on The Special Sauce.